everybody, thanks a lot for being here. Thank you so much for your interest in these holiday reviews. This video is going to focus on Tarte's Big Three, the largest palette style products that they're putting out for the holiday season. Last week I did a video on some smaller gift sets, but now I've had a little more chance to bond with these larger products, try them out, really get a feel for what's in there. The three that I'm going to be talking about are the Color Vibes palette. This is something that's available on Tarte's website, perhaps Macy's website as well. I'll clarify that in the info box. This is called the Tardis Paint palette, and this is the Ulta exclusive palette, and then Sephora has probably the biggest one of the bunch, the most expensive. It is called the Pretty Paint Box. So in this video, I think I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. I'm going to talk about my least favorite to most favorite. So number 3 of this bunch for me would be the Color Vibes palette. So this is a straight up eyeshadow palette. Tarte generally does a good job of dividing up their palettes into a very user-friendly format. You can glance at it, and if you don't feel like skipping around all over the palette, at a glance you can pretty much see what shades should be used together. So they're divided up kind of into these 5 color segments. Your top 2 are both very neutral and brownish. You've got some blue tones coming through down here, and then a plummy selection down here in this corner. And the size of these pans is actually rather large. It seems like every holiday season Tarte has some sort of palette that includes this size of square pan. Overall, 2 things that I have to kind of complain about this product. First off, color selection does not excite me much at all. Like, I glance at it and I think, how many times have I seen these exact kinds of tones included in a Tarte holiday product? I mean, they're just very, very common. And not just common for Tarte, but common in the scope of all kinds of eyeshadows. You know, if half the palette is going to be these just brownish neutrals, very middle of the road type shades, it's just not that interesting for me. And then number 2, I did find the quality of these shades to be a little bit hit and miss. Something you're going to hear me touch on a lot in this video is the fact that Tarte has recently put out some, very specific palettes in their line. The Tartelette in Bloom. In terms of what I've personally tried, I got the Styled by Harush palette, and I felt like what was in there is probably some of the best quality shadows that Tarte has ever had. Like, their shadows, both mattes and shimmers in these palettes, have kind of reached a new level of buttery creaminess, really easy to work with, very smooth. I've just been really impressed with what they have put out. And so that, of course, causes me to have this thought in the back of my mind, maybe they'll carry that through into their holiday stuff. And while maybe a few shades here and there share some qualities with those other palettes I mentioned, a lot of them don't. And while I certainly have been capable of getting some decent looks out of this Color Vibes palette, I mean, it's not unusable. The mix of light, medium, and dark makes it totally workable, really, in terms of putting together a look on your eyes. But I just feel like the textures of certain shades did not meet my expectations. And then the overall feel of the palette, I was wanting something more interesting, some little pop here or there that just really takes me to a different place that Tarte hasn't done before. Just taking you segment by segment on this palette. First off, this top corner up here, you can see the swatches. You've got a matte peachy shade in there and also a matte dark brown. Everything else has at least a little bit of shimmer. Some of those shimmery shades I found to be very weak and patchy. And then moving to the next brown segment right next door to it, you've got a very sheer shimmery shade in there. And as a whole, I feel like that group of browns performs a little bit more intensely than the others. Moving on to the blue section in the lower left-hand corner, I do like Seascape, which is this kind of shimmery blue, and I thought Inked turned out to be a really nice navy blue. And then the deeper purples in the final section I thought were pretty shades, but can require quite a bit of building up and working with when you finally get to doing a look with them on your eyes. Like I said, Tarte has revealed what they will do, what they are capable of putting in certain palettes with the softness of the mattes and the really nice creaminess and smoothness of their metallic shades. And I just saw so many missed opportunities in this palette to do something like that, to integrate those kinds of formulas. So this is my number 3. Really wouldn't recommend it unless something in here absolutely jumped out at you. I'm not trying to make your decisions for you, but for $46 and someone who's kind of seen this overall idea come and go a lot in Tarte's holiday collections, I'm not all that enthused. The number 2 product for me would be the Pretty Paint Box, and this is from Sephora. It's the most expensive set of them all. It's $59. Looks like this, has a pretty outer design design. It's a magnetic closure. You open it up, and I do think it's probably in your best interest to keep the sheet between, which I think is a huge pain, and I wish they would have just, you know, gone Smashbox style and done some sort of, you know, nice little plastic window in between these. But I mean, I think if you want to keep the fallout separate once you close the palette, you're going to want to keep that between your blushes and your eyeshadows there. So blushes, cheek products down here, bunch of eyeshadows on this side. This little window pops open, and you do have a mirror there, and then 3 individual products, a mascara, an eyeliner, and a lip gloss. Okay, things I like about this palette. Number 1, I think they're giving you a lot. It's a lot of shadow, 4 cheek products, some individual things thrown in. I do find it to be a good value as far as just the quantity of things put in here. Number 2, I think the face products, the quality of those is really good, especially compared to some of those individual blushes that were in one of those sets I talked about last week. I feel like the quality in here was a lot softer, a lot smoother. There's a nice blush, highlight, couple of bronzer type options. And again, I feel like the layout was really nice over here, just with the way they put these shadows together. You can easily look at it and see, okay, here's like my light, couple rows of medium, and then dark. But also, if you look horizontally, you can easily see some very simply laid out quads that follow certain color schemes if you're unsure of what to do. Now, the things I don't like about it, and I think kind of an important thing, again, a sheet, that's all you have. You got to keep track of that, I think, if you want to keep the fallout from shades that are flat out black over here, if you want to keep that separate from these blushes. Number 2, the quality of the eyeshadows. Very, very hit and miss. The misses were such big misses for me, and then the couple of hits that I had, I really, really liked the shades that I liked in here, but is it enough to overtake the whole palette and make me feel like it's worth $59? Not really. I'm gonna go ahead and show you the swatches, and I decided to go row by row, so we're kind of gonna go light to dark. The lightest row contains 2 shimmers, the shade called Glitter Glue, that first one, especially flaky. Pearl Earring, a little bit smoother, but everything else is matte and just didn't quite deliver enough intensity for me. And applying them on the eyes, they required a lot of building up. Going into the next row, more disappointments here with these medium shades that I thought should have been delivering a lot more. The shade called Frameworthy, which is kind of right in the middle, a medium brown that I think would get a lot of use out of this palette. I didn't find that to have enough color payoff. Also Hearts and Crafts, which is a little more rosy. That was a weak shade as well. So many colors in that row that looked like they should have been awesome and had so much potential, and I think will be frequently used shades in the palette that didn't give enough pigment. And then we move into kind of some statement type colors, a little more shimmer, a little more pizzazz in a lot of these. They all do contain shimmer. And bronze casting, probably the worst of the whole palette. I mean, so flaky, so weird to work with, really hard to build up on the eyes. The color called Selfie Portrait, which is that kind of taupey rose shade, gorgeous. It was like they could only put in one shade that was metallic and really rich and smooth, up to the standard of what I've seen in their other palettes. They could only put in one like that. But then we move into our darkest row, and there are definitely some hits in this row, but I found Silhouette, which is your all-out black, to be much drier, patchier, and harder to work with than the shade right next to it called Charcoal Sketch, which came through softer, deeper, more pigmented, but yet in the palette it looks like it should be lighter. There's one shade in that row that has a teeny bit of shimmer, and that's the deep brown. And then I did like the Stained Glass and Still Life shades. Those are your berry and plum colors. But again, the few shades I liked in this layout of shadows, I really liked, but the misses just took it so far south for me that I can't look at this and think, wow, this is great quality. The blush, highlight, bronzer section, I was a lot more impressed with. I think these are pretty generous sizes. I liked the matte blush called Moment. I think it was a pretty, you know, very universal peachy type shade. Authentic for the highlight, I found to be very workable, shimmery, but not too shimmery. Unique has a little bit of shimmer in it, although I don't think that translates a lot on the skin, and it's a very warm bronzer. Then a little bit cooler tone that more people might feel comfortable contouring with the color called Provocative. So overall, I really like those. You're getting like what's probably a deluxe sample size of the Tardis mascara. I prefer the Lights Camera Lashes mascara that they usually include in these kits, but I realized they're wanting to show off this new mascara, and the way the samples are in here, I really don't like how they lift straight out of the tube. It applies fairly nicely on the eyes. It's pretty buildable for me, but you've got to get rid of that excess somehow, and you end up putting it right around the outer rim. So when you put your thing back together, I've usually got goop around there that I've got to clean off. I do love this So Fine eyeliner that they put in here. Really super fine tip black liquid liner pen. This was very black, very intense, but a really fine, easy to work with tip, so I enjoyed that. And then you get one of the Tardis Lip Paints that has the glossy finish, not the matte, in the shade called Obvi. And this is a pretty kind of like peachy nude. I think it's pretty. I think it's a very, you know, across the board, people would like it type of shade. But again, the things I like in this palette, I really like. I think they're doing some things definitely right, but the things I don't like just take it over the edge for me to not enjoy this palette very much. The quality of the eyeshadows was just way too hit and miss for me, considering what I know about Tarte shadows recently. The types of palettes they've put out over the past year and a half, they've been really nice, and so this just wasn't consistent with that. So I realize this has been kind of a meh video so far, but I do have something that I really liked, and I wasn't just like trying to find one that I liked. If I didn't like this one either, I'd still tell you, but I did really enjoy the palette from Ulta, the Ulta exclusive, which is $49. So you got that first one I mentioned, which was $46. The Sephora is $59. This one's $49. It's called the Tardis Paint Palette, and I think this has much more consistency with the eyeshadows, much more interesting shades overall, really, that truly interest me, so I was excited to see them actually have some good color payoff. Every look I've done with this palette, I've been happy with. And then you do have some extras in here as well. So you open it up. First off, you have separation, total separation between your eye products and the face products. No need for a special plastic sheet that you got to keep track of. Huge mirror up top, and I like sitting it on my table and knowing that it just stays open like that. It doesn't have to take up like a whole lot of surface area. This doesn't come all the way back, but it stays standing, and you could actually put it at eye level with yourself if you're standing up to a counter or a dresser or something, and be able to use that full mirror and see your entire face. You've got 4 rows of shadows going across, and then if you look vertically this time, I think you can see some quads of shades laying themselves out very easily for you. Then you pull out this side pocket and you've got extras. Something also worth noting with this palette and that little gold window that was in the other, they have these plastic lift out dividers. So you could take out the divider and put all these things back in, as well as some other things. I think more would definitely fit if you wanted to throw in some other liners or mascaras or brushes, so just keep that in mind. But one thing that lifts out of here is your face palette, and this contains, it's really cute. I like this little palette, and then you've got a blush, bronzer, and highlight. You also get this blending brush, another glossy lip paint in a different shade from the first one, and another sample size of the Tardis mascara. Now, I feel like the quality of the eyeshadows in here is mostly on par with the other kinds of palettes Tarte has put out, and the swatches really tell the story. I decided to go like across the lightest row and then on down. So you look at these, there's a lot of mattes in here, and they weren't patchy, they weren't too sheer. They really kind of surprised me as far as what those mattes were capable of. When I put them on my eyes, they really show without the need to build up too much at all. Next row down, the mid-tone shades in here were really nice. Take It Easel, Renaissance Woman, those first couple I think will be widely used as crease colors, and they were really good. I think Abstract is gorgeous. That's that shimmery kind of soft rose color. You've got a bronze in here, another sort of deep stony colored crease shade, and honestly it just keeps getting better for me. As we move on down into the next row, there are a couple of shades. There are these two right here, kind of warm colors that have a little bit of like golden sparkle in them, but I don't know, sometimes I see it on the eye eyes. Sometimes maybe it just depends on the way I'm turning. It doesn't always transfer in a huge way, and it's not super flaky. So overall, I think you get a matte effect out of those shadows. There's a really great burgundy in that row, also a nice plum with a little bit of shimmer. And then in your final row, all but the green are totally matte. And I just thought these colors killed it. With the exception of Gothic, which is the black, and it seemed just like the black in the last palette where I thought, okay, that seems drier than all the other mattes. But everything else I thought, wow, I love it. I love the deep, deep orangey terracotta color called Doodle. Rich plums and browns. I like the olive green as well. This is more variety color-wise than I'm used to in Tarte holiday collections. I love how warm they went with, you know, this shade down here. You get some olive, you get some burgundy. I mean, if you are a warm shadow lover, you totally have options in this palette. Not only with that shade, but the Roy G. Biv and Beret colors that had like that little bit of unusual sparkle in them. Those really work nicely. If you're after warm tones in this other palette, really the shades you've got to work with are bronze casting and metal work up here, and those were not very good. Those were some of the weaker colors in the palette. So I think just in terms of overall variety, warm and cool, everything executed really well in this palette. What do we think of the rest of it? I've already told you my little gripe on the sample size of the Tardis mascara. I do really like this shade, probably even better than the gloss that was in the other. This I've been wearing throughout this video, a little bit deeper, richer nude. The brush they give you can make a nice blending brush on the eyes, but I find I actually like using it as a highlighter brush because the highlight is really the one thing out of this palette that I didn't enjoy so much. I feel like I've got to work with it a little bit more, build it up a little bit more. I mean, on my finger there, it looks plenty shiny, but something about picking it up with a brush, it kind of requires a smaller brush. So we happen to have that in here and it works well. This, you know, with these synthetic bristles, this could also make a really nice concealer brush too, just FYI. But you've also got a matte kind of deep dusty rose blush here. And this matte bronzer, they've got this contour label on here, but I think a lot of people will probably find that a little bit on the warm side for contouring. It's still nicely pigmented and it makes a nice bronzer, but I like it better as a bronzer than a contour. But my sort of order of application for those shades on my face, I did use this kind of under the cheekbones softly and also elsewhere on the face just to warm up the skin tone. Used a blush brush with the blush, very happy with that tone and the pigmentation. The quality was better than some of those individual blushes in the other set that I've referenced several times. And then, you know, the highlight, like I said, smaller brush really applies better. Now this plum shadow look that I'm wearing on my eyes today, I did want to show you just a brief demo with these shadows so you can see how it goes on. First off, I had applied a primer and then I used Renaissance Woman, which I think is going to be a very widely used crease color. In my crease, nice dusty mauve. Then today was my first time playing with Kaleidoscope on my eyes. That's the shimmery deep plum, and I really like that color. Kind of getting it on the outer part of the lid, pulling it up into the crease, looks so, so pretty there. I also smudged that color on the lower lash line as well, and then I also pulled in Renaissance Woman again there on the inner part of the lower lash line. I used the color called On Display, which is a really kind of brightening pinky matte color, and I used that on the inner part of my lid. I also used that as a highlight shade. And then that shimmery burgundy called Be an Original, I just applied that lightly kind of on the border of my eye look. I did apply that Tardis mascara, which again, I think it builds up nicely. It takes me a little bit of work sometimes to build it to the point where I want it. It's an okay mascara. Not the worst, not the best in my opinion. And then I applied some Demi Wispies false lashes just to finish off the eye look, and I have some mascara on the lower lashes too. But those are your three largest palettes from Tarte. Again, this is the Ulta exclusive. This would be the one that I will continue to get the most use out of, the one that I would feel totally comfortable gifting to someone and feeling like I was giving them something special that had a lot of variety, a lot of good quality in it. And I mean, the proof is in the use of the shadows, and I've just found these to be a pleasure to work with, and I've enjoyed every look that I've gotten out of it. And frankly, it's just a better design all around compared to this one. I know this might be bigger, and you look at this and think, oh, there's even more extras or even more eyeshadows, but really, this one I think wins out. Just quality and all things considered, it's the best. I have had a lot of questions about the Too Faced holiday collections. Reviews on those will be coming soon. So many other random little holiday things that have been coming out. I've been getting them, I've been trying them. It's just been a little workshop in here lately. So thank you for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.